Welcome to this video in which we will present the results from our project toward net zero infrastructure, advancing the environmental and economic appraisal of power plant, NIE2 app, specifically focusing on the solar case. So before starting, just a few words about the project. So the project is a PRIN project and it was funded by the Ministry of University and Research in 2022. Part of the consortium of the projects are Politecnico di Milano and Università degli Studi di Brescia. For what is about Politecnico di Milano, the department involved is the Department of Management, Economics and Industrial Engineering, and the research team is here presented. So we are Dr. Alessandro Paravano, me, Alessandra Neri, Professor Giorgio Lucatelli, who was also the PI of the project, and Professor Enrico Cagno. Before starting, just a very short disclaimer. So it was in the nature of the project itself to foresee and to guarantee the fact that the results obtained would have been shared and made available to the public. From this stand, we needed to base our evaluation and analysis on data that were available and accessible to the public. From this perspective, we have selected different case study and different technology to be analyzed. And in any sense, this selection is connected to a judgment of merit of the technology or the case study itself. Further, we would like to thank Anna Maria Conti and Dalia Scotto, who developed their master thesis work related to the project and specifically analyzed the solar case. So before starting, what was the aim of our study? We focus our attention on a water-based cleaning system for a photovoltaic solar farm in Bari, and we wanted to understand whether the installation and operation of this water-based cleaning system was appropriate or not in the context under analysis. So why did we focus on a photovoltaic system? So the global effort towards decarbonization and the reduction of greenhouse gas emission emphasized the need to shift from fossil fuel to renewable energy sources. And in this context, solar energy is already replacing the conventional energy sources because it is abundant, it's clean, it's cost effective, and it's not exhaustible in nature. Within the solar energy production, the photovoltaic power generation involves the direct conversion of solar energy into electricity, and the capacity related to solar photovoltaic increased in the last year, and it is expected to increase even more in the future years. This is true globally, this is true in Europe, and this is also true in Italy. A solar power plant, a photovoltaic power plant, is a plant. So as any other power plant or infrastructure project, photovoltaic systems are subject to risk during the life cycle. And the risk can be in the installation phase or operation phase or dismission phase. The risk to which photovoltaic system as a renewable energy system are characterized by high uncertainty, as for example, they are linked to electricity prices, fuel costs, and greenhouse gas emissions. It is possible to mitigate this risk, and both the risk and the related mitigation options have been largely addressed in the literature so far using traditional economic and financial analysis, as for example, the discounted cash flow. However, such method has some shortcomings, as for example, they focus on the economic aspect of the analysis and do not take into account environmental indicator or environmental issue, and they are not suitable for context characterized by high uncertainty as the context of renewable energy, as they do not provide enough flexibility to the decision-making process. To solve the issue of flexibility and the need for flexibility to deal with uncertainty, real option analysis offers good opportunity to assess those contexts with increasing uncertainty, enabling more informed decision to be made and in order to maximize the value of an investment. And indeed, ROA is increasingly applied in the context of photovoltaic system. Nonetheless, the real option analysis, the ROA, is still focusing mainly on economic aspect, ignoring environmental consideration. Environmental considerations are considered, for example, by tools as the life cycle assessment, who nonetheless suffer from the previous limitation, so the fact that it's not flexible, it is a static tool, and do not allow for the evaluation of potential variation in CO2 emission. So building on this, we develop a model for assessing the impact of the risk of the photovoltaic systems in terms of emitted CO2, of course, the CO2 equivalent. In this sense, we develop a model that is based on an economic model, as for example, the real option analysis, but we use it for evaluating the CO2 equivalent deriving from the context investigated. So for analogy, in the discounted cash flow and real option analysis, the cost element is in environmental terms is the CO2 needed to install and operate a certain system, while the saving element is the environmental, in environmental terms, is the saved CO2 because this specific system is active. So in our case, we will go together through the identification of a specific risk for the photovoltaic solar farm and the identification of a way of an option to contrast this kind of risk. And this option will allow for a reduction of CO2 emission, entailing, however, some CO2 emissions as well. So starting from the first point, the risk identification, concerning the risk to which photovoltaic systems are subject, we decided to focus on climate change related risk, which includes also the environmental risk. And environmental conditions are unpredictable, and global warming is making them even more predictable. This risk, the environmental risk, and their related impact are relevant. So it is essential to mitigate environmental risk on photovoltaic system. Within all the different environmental risks, we decided to focus on the risk of desertification, which may impact on CO2 emission due to the potential loss of the panel efficiency through dust accumulation and degradation. Indeed, desertification is expected to increase globally due to the combined effect of both climate change and human activity. And the likelihood of desertification in Italy remains high for the future and increasing. Basically, how does it work? Desertification leads to a reduction in vegetation covers and contributes to soil desiccation, increasing the generation of dust. The dust is a key factor in reducing the efficiency of the panel and accelerating the panel deterioration. And this, of course, contributes to the early aging of the solar panel. The accumulated dust on the solar panel reduces the sunlight transmittance, leading to a reduced power generation. In order to contrast this kind of risk, we have several options, and among the different options, we decided to focus on a water-based cleaning system. So the dust must be removed, and the removal of the dust is challenging. It can be cleaned and removed by the rainfalls, but they might not be enough. Therefore, it's important to have another system that is able to clean the solar panel. Among the different systems for cleaning the panels, we focus on the water spraying system, which is a technologically simple and overall a common solution. And specifically, we selected the water spray nozzle system. As for an hypothesis that we make, the system must be installed at the same time of the photovoltaic system. And for us, the real option considered is therefore to install and decide then to operate or not the water spray nozzle system. So based on this, the water base cleaning system entails some CO2, both during its installation and building and during its operation. The water spray nozzle system allows, however, the solar panel to be restored to an almost initial state in the presence of dust, thereby improving power generation. So what happens here is that the operation of the water-based cleaning system implies the use of water and has an environmental impact. And this is even more true in regions facing water scarcity and in regions subject to desertification. So basically, operating a water-based cleaning system leads to a trade-off in terms of CO2 emissions, because on the one hand, the cleaning of the solar panel generates CO2 emissions related to the water cost in terms of CO2, but on the other hand, it allows to save some CO2 emissions because the clean energy is produced again by the solar panel. Just as a further note, so far we have talked only about water, considering the operation of the water-based cleaning system. It is important to remember that water is not the only element involved, but we also have the consumption of energy. However, given the in terms of CO2 and the level of consumption of energy, for the sake of simplify our evaluation, we didn't consider the energy consumption. So what happens here is that our real option analysis model will evaluate, based on the CO2 emission, the convenience of operating the water-based cleaning system in our photovoltaic system under analysis in response to dust accumulation. In this way, the real option analysis model used in this study and in this work provides a flexible. So from this perspective, the ROI used in this study provides a flexible tool for making investment decisions based on environmental impact rather than economic benefit. Going more into the details of our evaluation, we decided to provide an empirical application of our model, and we took a photovoltaic farm near to the city of Bari as a reference context, and Bari is in the Italian region of Apulia, which was chosen because of its risk of desertification and water resource scarcity. Here we have listed some information about our system in terms of annual irradiance, daily hours of daylight, and peak power of the plants, as well as the lifetime that was 25 years. So going a bit more into the detail of our model, the model uses some geographical parameters as an input, as for example, the solar irradiance and the mean level of atmospheric dust distribution, to model the desertification risk and its associated impact. For doing this, we use a Monte Carlo simulation on the dust distribution to explore a range of possible outcomes under environmental uncertainty. So basically, our model analyzes at every stage the same decision. On the one hand, the option of activating and cleaning system entails water consumption, and this situation is weighted against accepting the risk of efficiency loss due to the dust on the panels. So the model calculates the CO2 equivalent emissions, considering both the emissions generated by the water used to clean the panel and those saved by improving efficiency. These data are then used to calculate the net present value in terms of CO2 emission, the NPV CO2 equivalent. So in other words, considering that saving CO2 sooner is better than say CO2 later, the model perform LCA analysis using exponential discounting to CO2 according to time. This is, of course, a standard practice in discounted cash flow to reflect risk that, however, our model introduced to LCA, considering the environmental impact, so the CO2 instead of the cash flow. The cumulative variables and input threshold are then used to determine the optimal year in which to exercise the option. By evaluating the net present value in terms of CO2 equivalent emission, the model considered the option of installing and operating or not a cleaning system. Some inputs are given by the option price and the option exercise price, where the option price is basically 0 because we have assumed the system to be already installed, while the exercise price is the price that is incurred during the activation of the system, and so it is related to the water use. So this process enables the impact of the certification on the system efficiency to be assessed and facilitate also the strategic decision to mitigate power loss due to environmental risk. We have chosen not to focus on the CO2 related to the building and installation of the cleaning system, as they are negligible when spread over the 25 years of the PV system. In terms of results that were obtained, here we see a distribution of the net present value in terms of CO2 equivalent emissions, and we see that the net present value shifts toward more positive value over time, so that basically exercising the option becomes more convenient as the year advances. And this makes sense because an increase in desertification leads to an increased accumulation of dust on the panel, so the net present value tends to increase over time as the avoided power loss from cleaning the panel increases. This can also be read the other way around, that is, that below a certain value of desertification risk, it might not be convenient to exercise the option. Now, beside the specific value that we obtain, that of course depends on the specific input that we provided, it is interesting to underline that the system operator using such a model will be able to determine the optimal time to activate the cleaning system based on various considerations, such as, for example, the risk level or a minimum maximum net present value they want to reach. We also perform some sensitivity analysis of different kind, or one factor or on multiple factor. So the first sensitivity analysis that we would perform was on the single factor, and it emerged that the desertification rate has the greatest impact on the selected variables that were the average net present value, the standard deviation, and value at risk analysis. And then we also perform some sensitivity analysis considering multiple factors. So, for example, we analyze the impact of both aridity and the cost of water in terms of CO2 on the net present value obtained. And for doing this, we analyze other 3 cities beside Bari city. And here are the results. The cities are characterized by different level of aridity, but also different costs of water, because some cities have fresh water available, other has to go for recycled water. And this is the reason why Cremona has the higher net present value, while Bari and Trapani have the lowest one, because Cremona has some fresh water available, while Trapani and Bari should rely on recycled water, which entails the consumption of resources in order to be made appropriate for the reuse. So they need some treatment. Another analysis that we conducted was to understand the influence of desertification and the cost of water in terms of CO2. For doing this, we focus on the Apulia region, and it is clear that as desertification rates increase, the accumulation of dust on the solar panel also increases, and it increases the frequency of positive average net present value outcomes, while higher water CO2 costs increase the environmental impact of the cleaning, so they potentially lower the investment net benefits. Something else that we tested was the flexibility of our system. So we consider different cities that are different among them for the desertification rate, water in terms, the cost of water in terms of CO2 and the carbon intensity. And here, besides the specific results, it is important to underline that the model that we are proposing can be easily applied in different contexts, requiring overall a limited amount of data, and can provide interesting insight to the peculiarity of each case based on its intrinsic characteristics. Last but not least, our model also allowed to identify the best year in which to exercise the option, so where to start the operation of the water-based cleaning system. And in this picture, the results provided in our analysis is reported, and basically the best year is determined considering the risk level that the decision maker is willing to consider, but also the minimum threshold of net present value that they want to obtain. So combining all this information, it is possible to understand the best year to start exercising the option that in our case was 8 years. This again to underline that the developed model proves a practical guide for assessing the environmental impact of activating or starting the operation of a water-based cleaning system, and basically the model is completely can be completely adapted according to different conditions and different goals of the specific decision maker. Summing up, with our research, we basically try to understand how to evaluate from an environmental perspective some way to manage risk in a very high uncertain context, such as the context of renewable energy and specifically of the solar energy in this case. So we have to couple the risk assessment with the CO2 impact assessment, and for doing this we develop some tools and instruments based on the real option analysis model that are available for supporting the decision makers, also according to the specific case of the study or of the context. And say that it will be for us of extreme relevance to clearly understand how we can work together with company and business in order to apply the developed model and support the decision-making process. So thank you for your attention.